Item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the special meeting on July 21st, 2020. Do I have any comments or motions?
I move that we approve the minutes of the special meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Proceed to vote.
My question is, Rebecca and Tom, are we including you in this vote?
Not me.
Okay, and Rebecca,
No, thank you.
since you were not in attendance, okay? McDaniel,
Yes.
Hello?
Candelaria,
Yes.
Remy.
Hello?
First item of business is a public hearing on a manufactured home park. Tracy, you're going to give us some insight on this before we have the public hearing.
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can hear me.
I think maybe we've lost
I'm
Tom.
I'm on a Zoom meeting. I got to get off the phone.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay, so this is an application to establish a manufactured home park. The applicant would like to locate 3 manufactured homes on a 1.45 acre lot. The land use code defines a manufactured home park as 2 or more manufactured homes. Also, the land use code section 3.05B states that planning and zoning and council shall approve the density, and it is not to exceed 10 units per acre. So this application is just for 3 lot units on 1.5 acres, so it's way under the density. And the way that this park is set up is so that each unit has basically its own parking, open areas, landscaping, and pretty much any other facilities required by the code will be within a part of that lot, you know, surrounding the unit. It meets spacing for the units because they are more than 20 feet apart. Essentially, the applicant is going to need to install all the required utilities, purchase any utility taps, and get building permits to install the manufactured homes. Basically, this lot has been used for this purpose, but it has not had any building permits since about 1999, I believe. There was 1 building permit for the northernmost home on the lot, and the other 2 spaces have not been permitted since then. So it is not considered non-conforming or grandfathered, and that's why we're here tonight discussing this application. Staff feels that this proposal meets the intent of the land use code and is recommending approval. Are there any questions?
Okay, then at this time, we'll open up for a public hearing on manufactured home. Anybody wanting to speak, identify yourself and give your name and address, please. Anybody wanting to speak for or against? I guess see no indication, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion, commissioners? I have a question, Tracy. Are there already this water taps in place already?
Not for all 3 units. My understanding is they have some infrastructure for 2 units, but not the 3rd.
Okay. So is getting that 3rd one contingent upon approval, or?
Yes, this application, if it's approved, would allow them to get a building permit for the basically they'd have to permit the second and third unit.
Okay,
I have my hand raised. I don't know if you guys are aware of that Zoom function, but it is a way to raise your hand over in the participants menu. There's a button in the lower right-hand side where you can choose to raise your hand if you want to be called on. That might be an easy way so we don't like talk over each other. But I do have questions if I can have the floor for a second.
go ahead.
Okay, so apparently parkland is something that has to be dedicated based on the staff report in section 405. Is that going to be done as fee in lieu since it's not actually a subdivision, or how will that work? And then I have a bunch of other questions too, sorry.
Right. Well, you know, I have to be honest, I didn't feel that section of the code was particularly clear. And the way I was interpreting it would be that because the parkland is like to me, it was like the area of the manufactured home park that was for open space for the residents of the manufactured home park. And because in this particular case, each unit's going to far, you know, have more land around it than the dedicated parkland. Because I don't see how we would dedicate land to open space for, this is not a subdivision. So that's why I didn't know what that reference was trying to accomplish other than provide, you know, an open area for the residents of the park.
Okay.
That's the way I interpreted it. So,
I know it's kind of a strange situation because most mobile home parks are condominiumized where you have a common land area and then you have these spots that are rented and something is temporarily placed there that's owned by someone or rented by somebody. So it's, yeah. Anyways, so it also mentions in 406 that there has to be a drainage plan and that the drainage plan has to be stamped by an engineer licensed in the state of Colorado. So I didn't see that.
4.06.
It's under Plan D, plan required, and then it explains that in your staff report. That it references.
Oh, right. Yeah, and so again, with these types of projects, we always defer to our city engineer to describe what that really needs to be. Because for this, again, for this particular project, I'm not sure a drainage plan would have
made sense.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of impervious cover, you know. The density of this is pretty low and it's an 1.5 acres and they're not adding really significant changes to the property. So I deferred to the city engineer who stated no concerns.
Okay. So it says it's required and none of these, that's the thing that I'm caught in a tough spot because it's requiring, our code requires a drainage plan. It wants on the plan, and then also on the site plan, it wants the location size of all necessary requirements of all sanitary sewer, fire lines, fire hydrants, and water lines, and individual connections, as well as their, you know, their size, which you can't tell from the drawing. Let's see. We can ignore the common areas if there aren't going to be any common areas, but just kind of going down the list. Is there, you know, is there skirting? Apparently that is a requirement that if they're above slab, then they're going to be skirted.
And all that would be handled at building permit. No matter, there's really, can't make them do it before they have a building permit. So that's something that gets addressed at the building permit stage.
Okay, just kind of strange that it's required in the land use code if it's a building permit issue. And then maybe I'm just pointing out all issues I see with the code. Is that okay? in this
Yes,
particular
we
issue?
are well aware.
Okay, I
I think we're in agreement on that.
okay, awesome.
I can assure you, actually, all of these were discussed as a group internally. All these requirements for this particular application. So, that,
I'm not questioning that at all. There is one thing though, point 4, it says a minimum distance of 20 feet shall be maintained between any two manufactured homes or other approved dwelling units in any direction. And I can't really tell, but it looks like there's an 18-foot difference between the unit on lot 2 and the unit on lot 3. And then there's no, I don't know what, it's not, the distance is not measured between the unit on lot 1 and the unit on lot 2. And that almost, yeah. So that doesn't seem to meet that requirement.
well, my
unless-
site plan shows 20 feet between those two. On right here, can you see my screen? Right there is, I'm reading 20 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm used to the numbers being parallel with the arrows. So that's what happened there. Okay, that is 20 feet. All righty. Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah, and it's not measured, but I think, if you were to scale it out, that lots 1 and 2 is farther away. And again, that can be guaranteed at the building permit stage, which frankly, with all of our manufactured home parks in the city, they have to comply with all of those spacings when they're placed. And so our building department does ensure that the proper spacing and the standards that apply at time of building permit are met.
Okay, well, it was just me misreading that on that case anyways. But since these are listed as considerations that kind of have to go, that planning and zoning also gets to review, I'm going to point them out unless the land use code changes. So then, let's see here. There was one more thing, maybe not. No, maybe that was about it. Oh no, there it is. Park Street shall be of adequate widths to accommodate contemplated parking and traffic load in accordance with the type of street, and such street and parking areas shall be a dust-free surface, so asphalt or concrete in parentheses. I don't know, I mean, it's technically a driveway, but it seems like it's gonna be used thoroughly. Does that have to meet some kind of requirement where it can't be gravel?
Again, regarding the streets, that's a construction design standards and requirement. And so I defer to our public works department and city engineer to verify accommodating contemplated parking and traffic load.
Mhm.
So and I will say that parentheses asphaltic materials or concrete, I don't know the section 5 that talks about required materials for driveways and parking areas is long. It has a little more language to it than the asphaltic and concrete section. However, I think that's a discussion point that we could have if you feel they need to pave these streets for the 3 units.
No, I mean, I'm just concerned that the land use code makes it really hard to approve something if I have to approve it based on these standards, unless there's a way that it can be exempt. And if there's some kind of waiver based on staff approval, I just don't know. I just didn't read that.
Well, I think that's probably the only one of the list that I think we don't have some wiggle room on if you feel that's a required standard.
I think it's gray enough, honestly. because I don't know if we don't have a major streets plan specifically saying that there's going to be a street that extends through there. And then it's going to be dedicated to the city. If it's on private land, I'm okay with it being a gravel drive. I think asphalt just encourages increased speed personally, but I'm just, again, it's the code.
Right, and so I guess to clarify, right now, the city's not recognizing this as a street so much. I mean, it's, I guess in this context, it's a park street, but really it's, you know, a park street that serves 3 residential units. So,
Right.
and then each residential unit will have the required 2 parking spaces. You know, and it is a little bit of a fine line because a lot of this, you know, has been there for years. It's just, it's out of compliance right now. And so I think that's a relevant point to discuss. And I guess, you know, I don't know if Phil Johnson would like to weigh in on whether this is going to accommodate more traffic. I believe his intention is it is not, other than those 3 units, so.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Yeah, you know, the intention here, I think, is just to, you know, bring an existing non-conforming use up to speed as much as possible. I do not foresee this driveway ever coming into our street inventory. And they are going to be purchasing taps and then getting the building permits and all that Tracy had mentioned. And there are options for paving other than asphalt and concrete if the applicant has an engineer design and proposes a dust-free surface. That we've never had that happen, but it's an option. And I feel, you know, from my standpoint, the only concern I had with regard to that street, or the drive actually, is accessing the abutting county property, and then that being used to, you know, get into the city's street network, which I wouldn't support.
Any more questions, Rebecca? Any other commissioners have any questions or discussion?
I'll have to say thank you to Rebecca because most of the questions that I had, she had as well. So I got most of them answered. I think the one thing that I wanted to touch base on, and obviously there's the condition in the particular motion that staff has recommended in regard to all requirements of utility providers. The part that I saw that was concerning to me on the plan was the busyness of the utilities. It looks like there's quite a few crossings, but the one that piqued my interest the most was in regard to lot 2, where the new home would be placed is per the drawings that they submitted for the sewer. It looks like they're tying on to an existing line that is already servicing the home on lot number 3. And again, obviously that would be between them and the sanitation district in regard to doing the proper taps and things of that nature. But what I've seen with flow and, you know, accommodating the proper amount of flows per all those homes and units, it looks like lot 1 ties onto that line as well. So if we have 3 homes and it's not accommodating, you know, if we have 3 full lines flowing into the main, which the main on the street view to me looks like it ties in on the north side of the property, if I'm not mistaken. But basically for me, I just want to make sure it's not going to cause a lot of issues for them in that regard, because I don't know what those service lines are and if that would be proper and all that good stuff. So basically what you're saying, Tracy, is all of this will be taken up with the various departments after, if we were to approve it, it would all be up to them to say yes or no, correct?
That is correct. And, you know, the agency's got this plan to review. They also met with the applicant in a pre-application meeting. And so, you know, they stated in their comments, the sanitation district has no further conflicts with this property. So, you know, I think, you know, yes, the actual installation of any taps or lines would have to meet their needs when the time comes to get those taps and everything installed. So I don't know that this plan's necessarily set in absolute stone. So yes, they would have to meet the sand district's requirements.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I guess at this point, then I would entertain some kind of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to recommend the approval of the manufactured home park site plan for the development at 1226 Animas Street as submitted by Joe D. Gray through P and Z resolution number 9, series 2020 with 2 conditions.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll proceed to vote then. Linda?
Butler,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Candelaria,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Second item on the agenda is a public hearing on an application for a site plan review with the Doobie Sisters. Neva, would you provide us some information on this, please?
All right, hello. Let me share a screen. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, just checking. I haven't used this computer before. Okay. Share. All right. Okay, so we've received a site plan application from Chris Wolf, who's representing the property owners Partners Rock LLC and Choice Building Supply. The proposal is to construct a 12,728 square foot building, currently addressed at 695 North Broadway. The intent is to build the structure in 2 phases, a 74 by 112 foot facility and a phase 2 that would consist of in addition to that building at 74 by 60 feet. The building is intended to house a cannabis grow facility, and there will be no public access or retail sales from that building. The property was recently approved for a plat amendment, which was required to enlarge the property from 0.81 acres to 1.66 acres to accommodate the proposed grow facility. The property contains an existing building that we know as the Doobie Sisters and is owned by Partners Rock LLC. The new structure and property, once the plat amendment is complete, will be completely owned by Partners Rock LLC. The proposed building will have ingress and egress to the property from a 30-foot access easement that runs along Highway 491. And attached to this application was a CDOT permit that was approved for phase 1 of this building. The setback requirements for the commercial zoning district are 10 feet for the front yard, 7 feet for the rear, and 0 feet for the side yard. And these requirements will be satisfied for both phase 1 and phase 2 of the proposed building. The applicants expect 4 to 6 employees on site for the grow operation. And they are proposing one ADA bathroom and perhaps a shower in the building. A floor drain will be installed for the occasional spray down of the facility floors, and a clean out sump provided for the floor drain to prevent debris from entering our sewer system. So So because this is a cannabis facility, they are subject to all state and local marijuana licensing agreements. At this time, the proposal does meet the 1,500-foot distance from other marijuana facilities and any schools, daycares, or licensed retailers. So the applicants are requesting a special exception for the parking. For other grow facilities, we've calculated the requirement at 1 space for every 300 square feet. And that would be 42 parking spaces for the full build out. Because there will only be 4 to 6 employees, and because by law, public access and retail will not be allowed out of that space, the applicants have requested to reduce the requirement to 17 spaces, including 1 ADA compliant space. And the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2013 and again in 2017 have granted similar requests for other marijuana grow out expansions. And just to note that if this parking special exception isn't approved tonight, that any change of use for the structure would require compliance with the parking standards found in the land use code. We did review the project for landscaping for the land use code requirement, and they have proposed to landscape 28% of the newly developed site. So the applicants have calculated that the new development and parking area will total just under 20,000 square feet and have proposed 5,400 square feet of landscaping. The landscaping incorporates 4,800 square feet of existing, but not previously required landscaping, and 600 square feet of landscaping proposed for the parking areas. So it does exceed the 10% landscaping for this project. We did send the project out for agency review. The staff report contains the comments. I think one issue was that a new tap would be required for the building, which the applicant has agreed to, and the landscaping plan was updated at staff request. So other than that, other agencies did not have any issues with the proposal. So we have included resolution number 8, and it does have 7 conditions, including resolution 8 would grant the special exception for this project. So I am open for any questions if you have any. And I do believe the applicant is here.
Okay, thank you, Neva. At this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on the application. To speak for or against, please state your name and your address for the record. Again, anybody here to speak for or against? Seeing none, I guess, Shay. Close the public hearing, and commissioners, any questions? Comments?
I have one question, and it may not, I guess, necessarily be in our purview. But for phase 1, it's a little over 8,000 square feet. And then if they do choose to move forward with phase 2, it would be over 12,000 square feet. On page 40 of our packet, I'm looking at the CDOT amendment to their permit number. And it looks like they have 3 different items, one for the building materials and lumber store at 21,000 square feet, one for the dispensary at 2,400 square feet, and then one for the grow facility at 8,000 square feet, which would not be enough for the proposed grow facility. Is that anything that we as P&Z need to be worried about, or is that just between them and CDOT?
Yeah, usually the access permit comes after the site plan approval. But we'll have to get another addition for access permit for phase 2.
Okay. And this
And they
access,
may want to run by that 8,000 square feet. They are probably going to need to run it by CDOT again, since it is 8,288 square feet. I'm not sure how picky CDOT is about, the extra 300 square feet or not.
okay, but that's nothing that we're concerned about, correct?
I don't believe P&Z has been in the past, especially since the permit usually aren't granted until after site plan approval. But we can make a note. Well, actually, that's pretty much included in the general conditions in your resolution. Where it says all requirements of utility providers, city departments, and affected districts must be satisfied. So, they won't, it's kind of falling under condition A.
Okay, thank you, Nipa.
You could certainly add a condition that when they come in for phase 2, we make sure that prior to building permit, they amend that CDOT permit if you want to be more specific.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Neva.
Okay. All right.
And
Hey, you guys, may I? Yeah, Chris Wolf speaking, 18 West Montezuma, if we have to do that here.
Chris, we had already closed the public hearing.
Oh, I'm not public. Oh, I'll mute. I wanted to interject, and on July 16th, CDOT amended my permit to 8,330 feet. So, Mr. Candelaria, that was a good catch. It kept me up at night. So CDOT has a new permit on record. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. I think ours was backdated back in April, the one that was in our packet.
It was, yes.
Anybody else have any questions for Neva?
I do. I've been looking at the site plan and maybe I missed something. I didn't see where any mechanical is going to be located. And is there going to be any air filtration system for exhaust the outside air?
I don't know that. Can we just refer that to Chris?
Go ahead. Chris, would you mind getting back on?
Yeah, the mechanicals will more or less be placed on the north side of the building on separate concrete pads. But what else is going on is the industry's moving so quickly, those mechanicals are sized to the room right now. I'm going to submit those with the building permit, and Sean will get to look at the heat load calculations. But we're kind of moving through that slowly since it's the heartbeat of our system. And so that's why we didn't commit to anything right now. And there was another question, another point.
Yeah, it was about air filtration for any kind of ventilation system, and how do you prevent noxious odors from escaping?
There'll be HEPA filters, and that's directly associated with trying to figure out the HVAC system. Some of them incorporate HEPAs in them, and now lately some of them incorporating the charcoals as well. So we're taking consideration what's going to leave the building as far as odors.
Is there any screening required for the mechanical as far as a land use code issue would be concerned? This is for staff.
Yeah, there is screening that would be required for that. And so it will have to be screened somehow. And I don't think there's any particular requirement of what it's screened by, but it does need to be screened.
Any other questions for Chris or Neva?
Is that something that should be pointed out, like the screening of the mechanical on the future site plan or a revised site plan or something like that? Should be shown for a condition of approval? Or is it covered more or less? I'm trying to look at the resolution now and see if any condition like that's already kind of covering that issue.
Right, it's not specifically covered, but since it is a requirement of the building code and our land use code, it does fall in that general A, but we can certainly add an H to the resolution.
And I imagine that the state probably has some oversight into that as well. So I don't know if it's necessary or not. And that might be a question for Chris, actually. If the state permitting process is going to be strict on your ventilation and noxious odor, or is that something that's going to fall under the purview of a local land use authority?
Well, yeah, before we go too far down the rabbit hole, the state's really not gonna look at us. They want security around our whole capsule. Yeah, and then regarding the screening, I'm not opposed to any, we take pride in what's going on there. We'll certainly add the screening, but there's a very good chance that our units may hang from the ceiling inside the building. And so where only penetrations would be the normal exhaust. So they're outside on a pad, they're hanging from our ceiling, and those are the big debates we're going through right now as far as that is concerned.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I guess I would entertain a motion.
Ready?
I haven't heard a motion yet.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to recommend approval of the site development plan for the construction of Beauty Sisters Botanicals at 695 North Broadway as submitted by agent Chris Wolf for property owners Partners Rock LLC and Choice Building Supply Inc. through P&Z Resolution number 8, Series 2020, with the following conditions A through G.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Then we vote. Linda?
Valeria,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Butler,
Yeah,
McDaniel,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing on an encroachment permit. Tracy, you want to give us some insight?
Yes, let me get my screen up. Okay. Can you see that site plan drawing? Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is a application for an encroachment into a city alley. It's DaVita Dialysis, and it's located at 610 East Main Street. It's that, I think it was the old Safeway. Is that right? People who've lived here for a while? In that structure, yeah. they had a loading dock in the back there, and they came in for an interior remodel and wanted to replace the loading dock. And it kind of came up that they did not actually have a license to encroach in the city's alley. We also were not sure when the loading dock was constructed, but it didn't look terribly old. So we are requiring them to get this encroachment permit so that they may put the structure in the alley. My understanding is that loading dock is used for basically removing waste from the dialysis activities out the back door, so it's not coming out the front door where the clients are coming in and being treated. They will need to reconstruct the dock to these submitted plans so that the loading dock is within the alley space itself, because right now and previously it was kind of extending into the private property next door. So they are subject to that license agreement that was attached to the staff report. I want to just make note that's a draft. Our city attorney is working on it, so it's going to change a little bit. But that's the whole point of this discussion, is to recommend one way or the other whether or not the city goes into that license agreement. So basically the alley dead ends on the north side of the existing building, and that existing building is built right up to the lot line. And that building was, according to the county assessors, built in 1959. So it's probably mostly non-conforming. Staff, looking at the encroachment criteria, staff feels the dock is necessary based on the needs of the medical use of the building. We don't believe that this will restrict access to the adjacent property owners because they do have some land area that fronts the alley that won't be obstructed by this loading dock. The property at 102 North Adams will have about 25 to 30 feet of unobstructed access along the alley. And the encroachment permit is in keeping with the city policy in that the city has permitted other encroachments for awnings and patios in city right of way. And this is a little more utilitarian, so it would not be unusual for us to allow this type of encroachment considering the other encroachments that have been permitted. I'm gonna scroll down to the site plan, if I can get my computer to behave. Okay, so yeah, so in this site plan, you can see the encroachment sites just out the rear of that building. And so this is kind of an unusual site because the alley dead ends right at the structure, and it's a large commercial structure that's, again, been there since 1959. And I think that's all I've got. Staff supports the encroachment. Do you guys have any questions for me?
I do, Tracy. This is Lance. The alleyway that we're using, that I'm assuming the people picking up the hazardous waste from this facility is, it looks to me like they will have to back in all the way off of Montezuma. Is that the way it looks to you?
Yes, and I assume that's what they've been doing.
So so the stuff is coming out the back door now. It's just not just without a dock. Is that right?
Well, like I said, that it had a dock, and technically one has been put in the alley right now that was replacing the old dock, and now they're gonna have to tear that down and build a dock that meets the specifications of these plans before you. So the applicant is on the call, and they could probably address the loading element a little better than I. The actual.
So Tracy, yeah, Tracy, this is Brandy with CBRE. They do back down a small box truck and load and unload and then pull straight out. And they have been doing this since 1997.
Well, what hours typically? Is it daylight hours or business hours? Or are they early morning hours that they're doing this?
It's typically, yeah, it's typically during operation hours during the day. I'm not sure if it's early morning or late afternoon. I've kind of seen them come and go at different times, but it's typically during the day.
let's go ahead and open the public hearing on this. And anybody want to speak for or against, please identify yourself. And I guess if Brandy comes there and speaks for it, then we can ask her those questions there. Anybody wanting to speak for or against?
There's no hands raised.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or discussion?
Chairman Remy, if we could get Brandy's address, that would be very helpful. Her name and her address for the record, please.
Brandy, did you hear that?
Oh,
Yes, my full name is Brandy, Brandi. Last name is Moore, Moore. I can just give you my home address. I don't have an office address.
whatever works for you, Brandy, just something for the record. Thank you.
Okay, it's 681 Bowles, Bowles Lane. And that's Gardnerville, Nevada.
Lance, you got any other questions?
I do, as a matter of fact. Thank you, Robert. I'm curious about the safety precautions on the dock. If I lived at 102 or 108 North Adams Street, and there was waste, medical waste, being loaded at a loading dock in my backyard or right off of my backyard, I'd be a little concerned about how that could be contained if there were an accident. I'm assuming the waste is in drums of some kind or plastic vessels. Is that correct?
So that is partially correct. We don't have a lot of medical waste that goes in and out of the clinic. The dialysis is pretty self-sufficient in staying in the reverse osmosis system. What comes and goes are the feeder barrels for that system, which is acid and the other materials that they need for the dialysis system. So it's the materials needed for dialysis. It's not really medical waste that's going in and out. It's full barrels coming in, empty barrels going out.
Okay, so I misunderstood it. I apologize. I didn't realize. I thought that was coming both ways. So basically, it's a dock for deliveries only.
It is correct. Yes.
The only thing I have an issue with is trucks with backup alarms backing down an alley like that of course, and then the people that live on Adams have to deal with the city market delivery trucks as well. So I guess that's just the hazard of living in an industrial area. But I think you've answered all my questions. Thank you.
Randy, how many years has the facility been there at that location?
The DaVita has been there since 1997. And my understanding is when they moved in, the existing dock did exist at that point in time.
How often does the truck make deliveries and pickups?
I believe it's 2 to 4 times a week.
Okay. You ever get any complaints from neighbors?
We have not, that I'm aware of.
All right.
Is Phil still on the line? Phil Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Phil, this I know this is an area that you and I have talked about with that the gate that's recently opened. Do you know if that's associated with DaVita or if that's the reason that gate is open now is because of the loading dock issue? I guess that doesn't really matter, but it's just a curiosity.
That did come across my radar recently, and the gate did go away. And we did some investigation on it to see if that was a condition for a change in use there from the old store. but it's just a private gate. Our right of way terminates at that property line. And, you know, there's nothing for us to do to really make them install that gate. So we just signed it as a dead end because that's really the limits of what I can, you know.
Okay, all right, thank you, Phil, that's all I needed.
Vance? On the gate, the reason the gate was put up in the first place was when the restaurant was being, they were applying for a liquor license for that building, and the gate was put there so that you had to walk around the property to get to the school. The liquor license was never issued for that property,
Gotcha.
so I'm sure that's why the gate's going away.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was connected to the loading dock or not having a loading dock. So if it's completely not associated with it, then I'm good. But that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions, concerns? Guess I'd entertain a motion then.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve or motion to recommend that council approve the application for an encroachment permit to construct a loading dock and shed for the property located at 610 East Main Street as submitted by agent Brandy Moore, property owner Cortez Main LLC, and as outlined in the revocable license encroachment permit and P&Z resolution number 10 series 2020 with 3 conditions of approval.
Second.
All right, thanks, Stephen. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's proceed to vote then.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Levy?
Oh, sorry, I'm not used to this. Yes.
Candelaria,
Yes.
Remy?
Yes. Next item on the agenda. Randy, you could go ahead and mute yourself if you'd like. Next item on the agenda, Brandy didn't hear that, I guess. Public hearing on application for a conditional use permit to establish a satellite facility for Battle Rock. And Tracy, would you give us some insight on this?
Yes, sorry, I was losing my mute button in the screen. So yes, the city was approached by Susan Thomas, the representative for Battle Rock Charter School, regarding having a satellite campus at 20 South Market Street. This is a contingency plan during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they wanted to use the space just to have additional space for social distancing and in the event that they needed to kind of spread the students out. The hours of operation would be from 7:30 to 3:45 Monday through Friday. It would be 35 students and 5 staff maximum in a 1,236 square foot meeting room. The drop off and pickup plan would be to head west on First Street, and there are 3 spaces south of the building on First Street that they could use for pickup and drop off. And then the school staff would accompany students to the room in the building and then return to the area of pickup and drop off. The Montelores Parish Structure building is also, the entity owns the parking lot to the south. And that parking lot, I believe, has what I counted, just the kind of west side of that parking, that paved area of that lot was around at least 24 spaces, and it wasn't being used when I counted the spaces. There could be more, they're not striped, but they do have use of that parking lot, and they may use the parking lot for pickup and drop off as well. I guess probably more pickup was what the narrative said. The parents could park there and walk over and get the kids and then walk the kids back to the car. And the pickup and drop off plan will be implemented through a written policy to the parents so that everyone is made aware of the plan for pickup and drop off to be safest. So because this is a conditional use permit in the central business district, it would require parking. Because the building already has a parking lot, they did actually have that to contemplate. And the use of a conference room as a school, based on my analysis, will not trigger, the change in use will not require more parking than would be typically required for the use of the conference room. So we feel that they meet parking requirements for the conditional use permit. Staff feels that this proposal meets the 6 criteria in the land use code, as provided they follow a pickup and drop off plan. The additional traffic will be mitigated by that policy. And then our city public works department is willing to assist the traffic and pedestrian facilities by repainting the crosswalks that appear to have faded in this air photo that you can see on your screen. And then if requested, they may designate some of the spaces on First Street as pickup and drop off for the school. So it should be noted, again, this is a contingency plan, and it's totally possible that the charter school won't even end up needing to use the facility. They do have an agreement that this is a month-to-month lease. And they have a variety of different ways they may use this facility, and it could include regular classes where they have like an A and B pod and the students are alternating campuses 2 days a week. It could also simply be just a place for students to receive tutoring or come to use computers and the internet. So they're proposing kind of the worst case scenario with the 35 students and 5 staff. They may take recess outside of the building if, again, they're in the worst case scenario situation. They might walk to Montezuma Park. They might seek an agreement with the housing authority to use the fields over at the Calkins building. And they may walk to Legacy Dance and do gymnastics in that facility. We had no agency comments of concern. I did receive word from our city attorney after the staff report went out that he did want his comment included, which was just regarding signage on streets concerning speed limits in the school zone. And then he pointed out that this is not really different than the school situation on Beach for Kiva. So I think with all of that, staff feels that, you can, I guess, make a motion to approve this if you agree that it meets the criteria.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and open a public hearing on the application. Anybody to speak for or against?
There's no hands right now.
Again, opportunity to speak for or against.
Jeff Sinbeck here in Mancus. I'm the designated representative of the diocese, the St. Margaret Mary Church building. And I just want to voice my support for this contingency plan for the Battle Rock School. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak for or against? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, questions, discussion. Yes, I have one. Tracy said it's on a month-to-month basis. So how, if we recommend to approve a conditional use, is that forever, or is there a certain time frame, or?
So conditional uses, if they continue to use it in this fashion, it would not expire by its own expiration date unless you set one. If they do not use it over a period of time, then it basically does go away. I believe that's 1 year, but I would have to double check. It's either 6 months or a year. So if they actually don't use it for 6 months, then they might have to pretend to use it just to keep that permit in the loop. But yeah, you could set it after a year. They did do that with the Children's Kiva, and they were required to renew it every year for a couple of years and then reapply for a whole new permit if they stayed at Beach. So that is an option if you're concerned.
I see Susan is in the audience. I guess if we have questions, be willing to address them.
Certainly. Thanks so much for including me tonight. This is all COVID related. We're trying to develop a safety valve because our campus is so far from town that really the bus becomes a problem. So, you know, if we can't take all our kids on the bus to our campus, then as Tracy said, we could swap them in 2 groups between the in-town location and the campus location. We certainly hope we don't have to do that, just because, as you can imagine, logistics are very complicated with K through 6. But this is a wonderful facility, particularly for people who don't have internet at home. We will lend out laptops and Chromebooks and tablets, and they could actually come and get the internet access there. So that was a tremendous problem in the spring. Lots of our families don't have it. They live in locations where it's very difficult. So this is sort of a safety valve backup catch-all plan. We hope it isn't necessary, you know, by the end of this calendar year, but I'm not sure anybody would get money on it. Right.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would have access to internet there.
Inside info.
As I understand it, the building is well supplied with that and, you know, already supplied. So we wouldn't be doing anything that was a big data load. But some families may opt for online learning, but then they have to have the infrastructure for it.
Duff, were you raising your hand to speak?
Yes, sir. I'll just affirm that the internet connection is more than adequate for school use based on its, well, we've tested it since we purchased the building 1 year ago from the Memorial, Southwest Memorial.
So you'd be willing to give out the access code to the internet then?
Just those who pay their rent.
Okay.
Actually, it may be on the sidewalk too. I can't answer that honestly, Robert.
Any questions for anybody else or anyone?
I have just one concern, Susan, and of course I think it's a concern at every school, is the safety of the students arriving to school and leaving school. And as far as crossing First Street, that's not a great crossing area because of the terrain, as well as the additional parking down by the post office. So I would just ask that you come up with a safe plan for getting your students into the building and out of the building and out into the schools. I know three parking spots isn't a lot when it comes to starting a school or the letting school out. So I know those three parking spots would probably disappear before you even started. I got started about getting students. And then of course I worry about the crossing the main street to go to Montezuma Park, but I know that the Montessori school did that at Beach Street as well, getting to the park. So I just want to put in a word of caution and to please use due diligence for the safety of the students when entering and exiting the building.
I think we'd be very emphatic with our parents. If they do park in that parking lot, they absolutely walk their children into the facility. If they pull up in the drop-off locations, our staff is there waiting for the kids to get out of the car.
Right.
So a letter will go out to parents. We keep in pretty close touch with the Battle Rock parents.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I have questions about pickup for the plan. I may happen to be one of those people that speed to the post office last minute because they close and I'm trying to meet a deadline for postal service. And I go down Market and hang left there on First, and it is kind of congested at that time of day, if pickups set for 45. Is there any thought to actually having crossing guards to cross students at that time if they need to? Or are parents going to be required to pick their kids up physically and then cross them across the street?
We haven't really discussed crossing guards, and I think the major reason is the most likely scenario for our use of the facility is individual tutoring, reading intervention, access to internet for those who don't have it. It's probably going to be much more one-on-one opportunities than classroom opportunities. And so I think it'll be so staggered, we won't have, a big rush hour either way, peak hours. I think that would work a lot better for us just to use it as supplemental space. That's
Okay,
a goal.
that would totally ease my mind too, if it is something that's staggered as opposed to at 7:30 and 3:45. So,
Right. I agree.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Guess I would entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of conditional use permit to establish satellite facility for Battle Rock Charter School as submitted by Susan Thomas and the Montelores Community Parish to be located at 20 South Market Street through P&Z Resolution number 11, Series 2020 with conditions.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's proceed to vote then. Linda?
Levy,
Yes.
Butler,
Yes.
Candelaria,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Remy.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is citizen participation. Please limit it to 3 minutes if you want to address the commissioners. Anybody out there want to address the commissioner? Hearing none.
You don't have any hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Shay. Any discussion items? I have nothing for your information. Any other items of business? Any previous business? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Let's vote, Linda.
Let's vote. Butler,
Yes.
Candelaria,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
Levy,
Yes.
Remy.
I'm already outvoted, so I'll just say yes.
Oh, very good.
All right, thank you, everyone.
See you next time.
Meeting adjourned.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.